Okay, so here we are today with another AI workshop, and today we have Jason Boyer who's going to talk to us about using AI to design lesson plans, which any discipline can do. So I hand it over to you, Jason.
All righty. Well, again, my name's Jason Boyer. I think I know most everyone here, but for those who don't, I'm an information systems instructor here at Reedley College. Teach IT support and networking, and hoping that one day we'll have a cybersecurity program. Just waiting on the state chancellor's office for that. Lori asked me to present on AI, and I just wanted to share really something that I found, and kind of thought about, well, how can we use AI in the classroom, or how can we use AI to make our jobs easier? The inspiration for this came from a conference that I attended back in January at Cisco headquarters. The main topics of discussion were threefold. One of them was cybersecurity, the other was data science, but the largest topic was AI. And we're used to hearing AI, maybe in a negative context. Our students are using it to avoid actually doing their work. Maybe you've heard about it in other contexts, and I see a couple of people here. I see Simon, who's in the computer science world, who has a much different understanding of AI. And I will say that in business, AI is being looked at in just about every facet of business. We're looking at it in terms of data analytics, in terms of building, finding different ways to process data to create information and to help not only make business decisions, but also now to execute them as well. So it's important that our students have an understanding of AI, because no matter what field you go into, AI is going to be a tool. It's not going to be this magic wand, but it is a tool that's going to help us in a variety of ways. And there's no reason why, as instructors, we can't leverage that as well. So I came home from this conference, and was getting ready to start the spring semester, and I was thinking, wow, how could I leverage this into something that something that I could use, and B, something that the students could learn from. So if you will, I am going to, let's see, start this show.
I'm just going to jump in really quickly. I am going to at some point in the chat put in just a little tiny short two question survey. If you could at the end just go in and take it really quickly. So
okay, we'll look for that. Okay. There we go. Okay. One thing I just can't stand is when oh, I guess I'm going to have subtitles on this too, maybe. Yes, there it is. So one of the neat things that Office has incorporated in PowerPoint is the ability to do instant subtitles, and it usually does a pretty good job. Okay, so I had just returned from this conference. AI is a huge topic, and I was looking for a new and engaging lesson that students could use to learn about topics in networking, and two of them are frame forwarding and broadcast and collision domains. It's really a foundational topic for students that are in networking. For many who aren't in the networking world, it means nothing, and it's okay. So another thing that happened was, because I had seen the potential of AI, and because in the academic world, we are going to, we have to address the use of AI. I felt it was important to finally put that AI policy in my syllabus. And so I wanted to put it to use, and I adopted an AI policy that was, that encourage the use of AI, but doing it responsibly, treating it like any other resource. That ultimately the student's responsibility is for the accuracy of the information and is responsible for citing it properly. So I wanted to give the students a chance to exercise that. So the solution that I came up with was that I ended up using the ChatGPT 4.0 model. How many, just maybe a virtual show of hands, how many people are familiar with ChatGPT and the different models? Just curious who might be or might be familiar with that. Okay, Jay is, Susie is, I presume Simon is. Okay, good. So these so the models, the AI models, they're each company that creates an AI chat engine, they use a generative model. So the 4.0 is the latest and greatest ChatGPT model, and it was the most up to date. So I used that model and I decided like on the criteria that I wanted this lesson to have. So I wanted it to be aligned to the Cisco CCNA program, particularly the switching, routing, and wireless essentials course. I wanted it to explain frame forwarding with a particular hardware switch that we use. And I wanted them to also be able to compare a collision domain to a broadcast domain. And the two objectives there, explaining frame forwarding and collision domain, broadcast domain comparison, those were actually taken from our course objectives, and they were distilled down because we have to do this sometimes in bite-sized pieces. But these were the objectives of the lesson. Okay, I also added another requirement that students needed to create prompts for a generative AI engine and use other academic sources. I wanted the students to be able to present their findings to the class. So I wanted it to be a collaborative effort that they get to practice some of their communication skills. And because of class time constraints, I asked about, I wanted to be completed in no more than 4 hours. So the prompt was, I literally put this in here and I said, I'm teaching a Cisco CCNA SRWE course. Please, and I always use please because when these robotic overlords take over, I want them to remember I was at least polite. But I asked them to please come up with an activity for students with the outcomes that students will, and then added one, explain frame forwarding in a Cisco 2960 switch, two, compare a collision domain to a broadcast domain, and then gave the other criteria. Students should create prompts for ChatGPT and use other academic sources and will have to present what they learned. The activity should be completed in less than 4 hours. This was my prompt. And so I was a little apprehensive. Well, what's this going to come up with? And in the prompt, if we break that down a little bit, it was very plain language, but we addressed everything. So we addressed the objectives, we specified the design requirements, we specified the product that they'd have to come out with, and then any additional constraints. And in that, I was kind of curious, what would the measure be? What would this come up with as a product? And I was really testing AI or the ChatGPT to see what it would come up with. And I'll show you, I'm going to flip over to the GPT window. So if you bear with me, I'm going to stop the sharing and go to this other window here. Okay, and so this is what it came up with, and I hope everyone can see this. It put a nice title on it, activity title, exploring form forwarding frame forwarding and domain concepts and network switching. It gave the objectives, gave the duration, nice list of tools and everything. This was all done without my prompting, so it's learned that lessons need to have a certain format. And it did a pretty good job of specifying and outlining the activity. One, we had 2 hours for research and understanding. And this is where I was really impressed that it came up with the idea to split into 2 teams. And this was an idea that I kind of had in the back of my head, but hadn't shared or hadn't prompted GPT to come up with. Is it reading my mind? Probably not, but could be. So first thing I had, it suggested we split into 2 teams, and each group focuses on one of the 2 topics. So kind of a divide and conquer type activity. It talked about the GPT prompts. It talked about using academic research. It assigned another hour for exploration. So it gave the suggestion of using either Cisco Packet Tracer or a real Cisco 2960 switch, which is something that's valid that we could do in either case. And in our case, I think, if I recall correctly, we gave I just had expressed that they should use Packet Tracer, which is a simulation program, to make it a little bit easier for the students. Okay. The other team had to diagram broadcast and collision domains. Okay. And then it gave the criteria for the presentations. Each team prepares a short presentation, 10 to 15 minutes, encouraging the use of diagrams, key points from GPT. It's very well researched and outlined activity. So at the end, the assessment came up, and I was really surprised when it came up and said, hey, evaluate students based on the depth and accuracy of the research, the quality of the presentation, participation in the discussion. It was very, very well thought out. Again, I used the good manners because robotic overlords taking over. And but then I realized this would be a lot easier and a lot more objective if I could put a rubric to it. So I asked it to propose a rubric and assign it 25 points. I believe if you add up the math, this one might not have come out exactly 25. I did have to do a little bit of massaging to get that, but I was able to get this, was able to use this to develop the rubric, and it had, in my opinion, a pretty good balance of point values. For example, the research and prompt development, that was one of the kind of the side objectives that we added. Quality of GPT prompts, it assigned 3 points, and the academic research 2 points, which, because we wanted that focus of GPT, I think it's fair to weight it that way. And otherwise, came up with a fair rubric. So you're probably wondering now, how did it turn out? And so, pardon the switching back and forth here. There we go. Okay, so how did it turn out? And this is the product, and I'll bring this up. I have this on another screen, but the product was a fairly easy to follow and easy to execute lesson. Start to finish, this took me less than an hour to come up with the prompt and write it up, including adding the rubric. Okay. So some of the pitfalls that you might encounter in creating a model like this, or using AI to create a lesson, I should say. AI models are only as good as the body of information that they bring in. So if we have, if you're, if the body of information in your discipline, if it's taken in a lot of errors, you're going to, as I say, garbage in, garbage out. You might see some errors. So you're still going to have to read through all of the instructions, all the criteria, and sometimes you might not get such a great one. Different models, for example, Microsoft Copilot gives a little bit different results when you ask for such a lesson plan. It may not be bad, but it's definitely going to be different. The lesson plan is not perfect. There were a couple of very small areas where I had to make some tweaks because what I was asking the students to do just wasn't right. And most importantly, where facts are presented, I always encourage users to verify those facts against academic sources. All right. So before we get started on the activity, does anyone have any questions for me? Is there anything you'd like to explore?
So part of your assignment was actually having them use ChatGPT to do something too?
Yes, and that was and part of the research phase of this activity, whether they were researching the switching or the domains, they needed to use to formulate a ChatGPT function. And I think in the presentation, if I remember right, either I specified it verbally or perhaps in the lesson. I actually had them share out the prompt that they used. Yeah, and as I recall, both teams did did share that.
And then are there any things that you found like not to do when you're doing a prompt for a lesson plan, or any things that you should do specifically?
Should do's as a matter of fact, I'll share this as part of the activity here. So one of the things that I ask or the things that I would suggest, address the objectives, be specific, but don't be too wordy. Just like we can overload our students with instructions, I found that with the GPT model, there is a certain amount of input or a certain number of iterations. If you keep asking it to go back and either reanalyze or re-respond to a prompt, or if you give it too much input, you'll get what are called hallucinations. And if you get those hallucinations, or if you give too much detail, you get some really, really weird results, stuff that just doesn't make sense. And I'm not sure why that happens, but it does, and you'll see it. It particularly happens with the DALL-E model, which is based on the OpenAI model, and that's where DALL-E is for creating images. And you can give it a prompt, and it will do its absolute best to give you the image that you're asking for. Problem is, I found after 5 or 6 prompts in a row, it'll start to give you some really weird images. So any other questions?
Yeah, Jason, where do we get that chat? Is it embedded in Canvas, or are you working in Canvas with it, or?
It's actually a website. You can find it by going to chat.openai.com.
Okay, so it's not provided for us already within the Canvas format.
No. This is going to be something you'll go to separately.
Okay.
Do you want to share your screen and show him, Jason?
Yeah, I started typing and I realized I wasn't sharing the screen anymore. So
Jason, I don't know, you might be privy to information like this, but is there a plan to embed an assistant like in Canvas for instructors in the future?
I don't know. I don't know that information. Um, I can't imagine that they,
Maybe Amanda would.
yeah, maybe Amanda might know.
Yeah, I feel like that's like I'm surprised we're not there.
An
But that's the
assistant,
natural next step.
an assistant for teachers or for students?
It could be for either,
You
to
might
be
Yeah.
give a lot
honest.
of English teachers like panic attacks with that.
I mean, I feel like I feel like we should, you should be using it, and if it's
Yeah.
there, I think more instructors would be. It's a lot more convenient when you're not having to go back and forth, for example, when you're creating an assignment, right?
Exactly, exactly. Instead of having to switch screens, and I see pros and cons. If you use the AI assistant, either the functionalities can be limited um, to what instructor thinks you need, and in some cases that might be great. In other cases,
Well, especially for like Canvas specifically, like Canvas related things, I think it would be really useful
yeah,
to like make things easier for us, right?
exactly create a lesson template.
Find all instances of, dates that are on Wednesdays and switch them to Tuesdays, because last semester this class met on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and now it meets on that stuff's easy, right?
Yeah.
But it's a pain in the rear for us, right?
It is. It is. And when you think about it, if you can create the rule in your head, AI can do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like copy my announcements I have my announcements copied from last semester, change the release dates of these announcements so that they come out at the right weeks and the right dates, right?
And I think that would be much. I think it would be much more useful.
That
Than
would
some
save
other
me so much
information
time.
is.
Yeah.
One interesting thing, just a side note, is for the hosts of chat or of a Zoom session. There's a little thing at the bottom. It's called AI Companion. And what the AI Companion will do is create a summary of what was said in a meeting. And if there are, if somebody's assigned something, if we say, hey, Simon, I need you to, investigate Canvas to see if there's a way that AI can be incorporated into the Canvas system. It will actually create a to-do list for Simon and put that item on it. It's
Yeah.
really,
In the last two workshops, someone had turned it on, but I didn't turn it on. But just going back to Javier, so yeah, if you go and Google ChatGPT, you'll find it, and you might have to sign in. I think you have to sign in and create an account. But then it's pretty intuitive on how to use, and I'm sure Jason will show us. And then there are other ones like Claude, which is also really good. CLAUDE.
You can actually try it without using an account. Just, it won't save your previous things. Like I know that sometimes I'll use a different browser, just because I'm not using Google Chrome
Okay.
for whatever reason. And yeah, you can go in, not logged in and use it.
Yeah,
Just to try it.
that's what I just tried without logging in the account, and they came up with something.
yeah. And if you have the paid model, it'll give you the latest and greatest. But if you're using the free version, it'll still it's either the GPT-3 or the GPT-4 model that you'll have access to. And GPT-3, even though it's a little bit older body of data, it's a little faster. The GPT-4 is more comprehensive, and 4.0 even more comprehensive. Allegedly, the responses are a little bit slower, and I think you can see that when it's under a considerable load, because there's here's this centralized AI server somewhere, and you have lots of users accessing it.
Jay has a question.
Okay.
Hi, one question, one comment. Also, just to make sure, is my microphone working? Sometimes I have problems.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So the first thing is I just did a quick search to see if Canvas is officially doing anything with generative AI. Looks like Patrick in the chat said that people are building custom GPTs for Canvas.
Mhm.
but Baylor University has an article from July 31st where apparently they've built modules for smart search and discussion summary. So if folks want me to throw that in the chat, I can. And then the other one is I'm wondering if you've done anything. It came up briefly with different generative AI models. Because of like what I pay for Google and stuff, personally, I have access to the latest and greatest Gemini. I was wondering if you've done any playing around with different ones, because I know we were having a discussion a while ago between departments of like the different AI models and how like some of them are really great for like, hey, are you trying to do a research kind of project and like use this one? Are you trying to do this thing? Then there's that one. I wondered if you've done any playing around and just seeing like, are any of the generative AI models better at like pedagogy than any of the other ones? Because I've seen very similar results to what you were seeing with Gemini.
Yeah, and I think they all come up with pretty good ones, but you're right. Just the responses are going to be a little bit better. I think ChatGPT and Copilot probably give a little bit better responses. And just for an example, let's see here. I actually had another lesson that I was looking at, and we can explore doing this one as well. I was I was duplicating a lesson that we had before. Let's see if I can share that. Just gonna share screen one.
Jay, I know that Amanda Tainter taught, like in one of her presentations, she talked about some of the differences between them and how they are a little bit different, and I just cannot remember all of that information right now.
I have a list somewhere from a Flex Day seminar that I don't remember.
Yeah. So I don't know what campus are you on?
I'm at Clovis College, so I'm the brand new chemistry faculty this semester.
Oh,
Until the other
congratulations.
brand new chemistry faculty next semester or next fall.
Even though you're there, you could still always, and you probably have an instructional designer there too.
Yeah.
Susie might know.
I think so.
Okay, but Amanda you could always send her a message saying you were on this, and I can throw her name in the chat too.
Yes, please.
And I would encourage too, even per discipline, I think there might be some differences. Just like people have personalities, the different models have personalities, so to speak. So it might be worth trying a few different models with the same prompt and see how they respond. And I'll give one example I have here. Let me see if I can share this screen here. So on the right side of this screen, I have I've asked Copilot. Let me see if I can widen this a bit. So I asked Copilot to recreate the same lesson that we looked at earlier. And this one was a little bit different. It came up with a different activity. And it was a little less prescriptive. This one said divide students into pairs or small groups. And it gave an hour, to for the frame forwarding simulation. And then it came up with the collision versus broadcast domain part of the lesson, and it was not as descriptive of what needed to be done. So I wasn't as happy with that one. But then when I asked, and it came up with the rubric and all of that. And then I have another lesson that we're actually working on right now. And so I wanted to try something different. I asked about a lesson plan on understanding printer technologies, and it came up with a lesson similar to one that I have now. So this one has the students will use a projector or a classroom with a projector screen. So we're going to have some kind of a presentation, whiteboards and flip charts, and laptops and tablets for the student research, which very standard setup. This one had us divide the class into 6 groups, which I divide the class into 8. But again, that's just details. And so it came up again with a fairly nice one. Would it be the same in GPT 4.0? We're going to find out. Actually, it's if we look right over here, this was the result of the same prompt. And it had a similar outcome. I like the ones that the outcomes in the GPT a little better. I think they're more organized. I think they're a little bit more clear and what they're asking for. But it may come down to what you prefer as an instructor. So, any other questions? Let's see here. And thank you, Simon, for bringing up the comparison or sharing that comparison link. Okay, so I'm going to share one more time. I'm going to come over here. So the activity, and feel free to, I'd love for everyone to give this a try. Select the lesson that you currently use in class and log into any one of the generative AIs. You can use ChatGPT, you can use Copilot, you can use Claude, you can use Gemini, any one of them, and then create a lesson. So create a prompt that uses so using the objectives for your current lesson. Use oh no, what did that? Okay, so it's asking to or the prompt is to create a new lesson using generative AI, adjust the objectives that are in your current lesson, specify the design requirements. What would you like it to come up with? Specify what they should turn in as a product. It can be detailed, but remember, if it's too detailed, you might end up with AI hallucinations. And then finally, just add whatever other constraints you want, and see what you come up with. And it shouldn't take very long, so maybe give it about 5 minutes, and then as we're working, if anyone has any questions, please bring those up. And then when you're ready, I'd like some folks to share out what you came up with and what your thoughts are on these.
I think while we're doing this, I'm going to stop the recording and then I'll start it again for the share out.
Sounds good.
Okay. I can fit it, I can make it smaller if I want to condense it. I can expand it. It just gives me something to work with that I didn't have to like spin my wheels for 15 minutes. Like, what am I going to do with that content that makes it more fun this week? This gives me a whole list of things I could do, and then I can pick and choose and, pare it down. So for me, it's a wonderful stimulative thing, and I'm excited about it. So thanks for what you're doing. It's been really fun to be part of this.
It really is, and I love the conversation, hearing how it affects other disciplines. In working in the business department and information systems, our whole purpose is to collect data and turn it into information. And so AI is a necessary part of that. But as you stated, that this is a tool that everyone is going to have to use, no matter what direction you take in life. I know in my generation, especially when I was younger, everyone's going to have to learn to use a computer, and now it's everyone's going to have to learn to use AI, and we can't be and I hope I'm not picking on any math teachers here when I say the old "you're not always going to have a calculator with you" argument isn't going to fly, because we have these silly things that we do have access in a lot of places, And it's a matter of learning how to use the tool appropriately, but we still have to learn the basics. Before you can use a calculator, you have to learn to use math. Before you can use um, before you can use GPT to help you write copy for or write a manual for a product, you have to know how to write first. You have to understand it because you have to know, is this saying what I want it to say? And you can, and GPT can never express your emotions.
I feel like for me that these conversations and why I like doing this type of professional development, it kind of opens me up a little bit, and especially hearing from people in other disciplines too, because again, in English, like I want my students to learn how to write, and it's so easy for them to throw something into ChatGPT, and there's a lot of free stuff now, and hopefully there are places on campus where they can go in and use computers and stuff, or rent a computer or something. But yeah, I learn from these conversations, and I'm curious how other disciplines use it, like how STEM uses it, science uses it. How are these other disciplines using these AI tools? Because I don't know, and maybe that's how we as English faculty then can also support our other faculty. Simon?
Yeah, so that's just one thing I wanted to add to what Jason was saying and what you're saying is that the one thing I get to hang over, because you say with a language class, you have this issue. I have that same issue because I'm teaching language. I'm teaching programming languages,
Yeah.
right? And it actually, a lot of these models do a really pretty darn good job writing code, just based on one of my prompts, for example. So there's that risk. But the one thing I have to hang over students' heads is, if you want a job in this field, you're going to have to go into a technical interview, and you're not going to have anything other than a piece of paper and a pencil, and you're going to be asked to write code. And if you think you're going to get away with using AI to generate all your code in these classes and then show up at that interview and, I don't know, do something other than wet yourself, it's not going to go well, right? So we have to be frank here, and we have to make sure that you're making use of this time that we have in this classroom, right, to prepare yourself for that day. And that's why I specifically give them, exams that try to prepare them from interviews where you can't use AI. So we talk about the use of AI and how you can positively use it. AI. For example, like one of the things I do in my data structures class, and actually in most of my classes, is for projects, I let students choose what the topic is. So in a data structures class, for example, I tell them you need to implement a linked list. You figure out what data you want to work with, whatever interests you, and I'm going to grade you on your ability to implement that linked list properly and effectively and efficiently, and document it well and all that other stuff, right? So we have a lot available to us, and we need to just make students aware that this is a tool just like anything else. It can be misused. In fact, while you were all talking, especially I think it was when Jason was talking, I went over and looked at my syllabus comments on the use of AI, and it just came across really, really negative. And I just popped it into AI and said, hey, can you make this sound a little bit more positive? Still keep the the importance of the message there. And I updated it. Because on the first day, like I addressed it, you have to address it. It has to be addressed. And we spent, maybe 10, 15 minutes talking about it on the first day of class in all my classes, because it's important to have that conversation. Because if not, they may not realize the detriment that they're putting themselves into, right? The slippery slope and shortchanging where they might be able to go in the future, right? So I just wanted to throw that in there, but I definitely use it. I encourage students to, I tell them, use AI and learn how to write a prompt. And I've even made it part of some of my activities going into the semester where, at the end, after we're done learning about linked list, for example, You know, type a prompt to AI, open up ChatGPT and type a prompt like, I need to utilize a linked list for my computer science data structures course project. I am interested in this type of data. Can you give me some suggestions on how I might implement a linked list, but do not give me code, because that would be a violation of academic integrity.
Oh.
And I tell them that if you don't put that last part in, it'll give you the code because it wants to show off, right?
Yeah.
But you got to be careful, and you can learn good ways to use this, right?
I will say I've dabbled a little bit in code and doing some stuff in Python and in TypeScript on AWS app development, and it's all the code I've gotten sort of works, but it needs someone to go over it, and it needs refinement. It's not perfect, and that's where I think that's where students might run into trouble too, is they have to figure out how to make it work, even if they do get code from an AI engine. Maybe for simpler problems it's a little different, but
one of the things I've done is I've made them do all their development now in GitHub. So I can see, and I tell them that I'm going to grade you on your commits, which is basically whenever you're making a change
right.
to your project, you're describing what the change is and why you're making it. And that's real easy to do because all they do is hit a button when they do that. And then I can track all that, right? You can track changes in an essay, right? If they're using Word. So you can easily have access to the same kind of thing.
In Google Docs, you can do the same thing. I just don't have time for it. Jay, you've had your hand up for a while, so I want to let you.
No worries. It's a good conversation, one that I appreciate. So it's real fast from a chemistry perspective, I've run into the same problem when I try and bring AI into my classroom, where I haven't found any generative AI that's really good at problem solving in chemistry, which is both a blessing and a curse, because if a student tries to use GPT, Gemini, whatever, to solve a problem for them, it's miserable at it. It's absolutely miserable. It has no idea how to do it. It can explain to you how to solve the problem, but it can't do it itself. And so for me, it's in this excellent sort of like halfway state. And so this is very much just an idea guy moment of like, it may be that there needs to be a push in the AI space of like, hey, we as educators need something that's forced to abide by academic standards, where it can't do these things, right? You know, a ChatGPT school or something, right? And then in addition, in the chemistry space, I also run into the problem where so much of the ground has been tread in the same way that all the different generative AI models get caught in the same ruts that we as instructors do, where I go in, next week, I'm doing a determination of an empirical formula lab. Everybody does it the same way, where you take a piece of magnesium and you light it on fire inside of a crucible, and then you take the mass of it later. And it spits that right back out to me. And I can change the prompt and say, hey, I want a health focus. Hey, I don't want to use magnesium. Well, you can use this other metal. And so when you're in a spot like I am right now, and I do have to leave in like a minute or so, I have an emergency curriculum committee meeting that I have to get to. But in chemistry right now, I've run into a problem where the rut is so deep that I can't force the model out of it, right? There's so much data that it's been fed over and over again, where it's doing the same thing and doing the same thing and doing the same thing, where it's like, oh, well, this is the only answer to this problem. It's like, no, I'm trying to get new ideas. I'm trying to bounce something off of you and getting nothing back, which is beneficial for me as an instructor because my students can't use it to problem solve. But it's a problem when I want to use it for this, like, you know, great creative space that it's like projected to be into, right? Good old all of that. Gotta love all of that Common Course numbering, but also when your Zoom link breaks and then you can't abide by Brown Act, so you have to cancel the meeting.
They just started making our I think curriculum and Senate in person now for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is an awesome conversation, and I so appreciate every one of you for coming, and Jason, for you for hosting this and sharing. I actually did do my assignment, and kind of got an idea from yesterday's workshop and applied it to this. So Javier, I feel like I'm cheating. Thank you for that. We have a ton of other great workshops. Benny Nig is going to come. He's from, I forget what college, but he's like really cool. So go back. I know at Reedley, I just sent out an RC All, and there is his little bio with a link of his syllabus. And if you got this from Fresno City too. So anyway, any last words, Jason? This is awesome.
I just want to thank everyone for coming in with great questions and just a willingness to learn about AI, because it is scary. And yeah, students, they do use it to cheat. I had one use it the other day and it was pretty obvious. So, you know, it is out there, but I don't think it's something as much to fear as it's going to be a useful tool. It's going to take the drudgery out of some of our work and replace it with other drudgery. So
how did you deal with the student, Jason? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious of.
Easy. I noted this is obviously AI. It's you know, you didn't follow the AI policy in the syllabus, so I'm awarding a 0, and that's the end of it. Student recognizes a mistake, he says he won't do it again, and if he doesn't, that's fine. If not, we just take it up a step.
Do you let them redo? So like I let my students redo an assignment if I catch them using AI or cheating in any other way. Because I feel like, I don't know, it's a learning experience, right? And so do you let them redo it or?
It depends on the lesson, and if you know, if it's something that's critical and if it's something that's a big assignment, absolutely. If it's something, this one was, it was a smaller assignment, but it required finding images or creating images and creating basically their own study guide.
Yeah.
And so his loss was he has a bunch of AI generated images that are incorrect, and you know, as he studies for this bigger exam, he's going to have to find another way to study for that. So I think the consequences are natural ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that idea of doing a study guide though. So many, I love talking with other teachers, so many great ideas. So anyhow.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We will
Bye.
see you next time. And Patrick is also going to be giving a workshop soon too. So make sure you go on there.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
Yeah.